Hello and welcome. My name is Nikita Polyakov. I'm a senior FastTrack solution architect in our Common Data Service Dynamics 365 for Apps product group. FastTrack organization works with customers on their journey of getting on board with Dynamics 365. What kind of been known for customer engagement. It's called CRM Online. It's basically all your sales processes. So that's the group that I work on today. You can, if you're a new customer onboarding to Dynamics 365, you can look us up online. I probably should have had a link here, but if you look for FastTrack for Dynamics 365, you'll be able to find that there's FastTrack for both CRM side and the ERP side, and with some minimum requirements. Is if you're starting a new project, you can engage us. We got a great success by design model here to help ensure your project success. We're not services, we're more like advisory and best practices group. So you, your project team, and your implementation partner get together, and we add on top of that to help you improve your projects. The topic today is Dynamics 365 and Power BI. Now, as kind of preluded from my intro, my focus is going to be on the CRM side rather than the ERP side, because that could be a whole different topic around the ERP side of Dynamics 365 and Power BI. A little bit about myself. I've been in this role actually coming up on 4 years here, and I happen to be a subject matter expert on a few topics, as we all are on our team. We all come from diverse backgrounds and things that we're just naturally good at. So for me, it's actually portal technologies, anything with UI, user experience, development, and performance aspects. Everybody wants their operational CRM systems to run really fast, and I've got a knack for that and things like that. In my day job, I cover larger enterprise customers that use our products and work with them on their best practices. Before that, I was actually in the Dynamics CRM partner channel. I worked for partners implementing Dynamics CRM from functional developer and architect roles, and even was a practice director for mobile and portals technology at a partner, helping our customers implement these products. In my previous life before that, I was actually a .NET developer. So you mentioned the South Florida tech community. I'm here in Tampa, Florida. So I've been around probably for 15 years in the tech community here in Florida, speaking at SQL Saturdays, code camps, and in SQL Saturdays, you probably would have seen me talk about our Mobile Express products and how they relate to the Windows Mobile Developer Platform. Back in the day, I was a Windows Mobile developer. But as a developer, I had a chance to work in a project building a custom website on top of Dynamics. I really loved that technology and went into that career full time, and that led me to a career at Microsoft. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about a little bit of just actually setting the baseline of what is Dynamics 365, what is this common data service, and then we're going to dive into the actual reporting platform and options there. And I'll even apply some of the lessons from our team and give you a little bit of a background of typically what we see in the best practices around that. Now, Dynamics 365, we actually been around since 2003, right? So we were on-premises product, right? You install SQL Server, install IIS, you have Azure Active Directory, and you ran it kind of like most of us did in 2003, obviously locally within your network. We've grown and matured into a full SaaS product. In fact, to such a degree now, in the recent years, that we're actually the largest SaaS product hosted in Azure, because we are a global SaaS service. We use so many, and we always use the latest products from Azure. We're one of the biggest products running in the Azure space. But we got with an introduction of Power Platform, we'll talk about that in a minute. We got a tremendous amount of users and organizations of our platform. So one of the things, and I've clipped up a number of slides here. There's this whole concept of digital feedback loop that we'll talk about, and a lot of that tends to do with the fact that everything's generating data in our enterprise organizations, in our consumer, in our industrial worlds, and a lot of that data ends up in Azure. Right. A lot of that data goes to the Power Platform. The Power Platform is what the Office 365 and Dynamics 365 leverage, right? And then you've got customers and partners building solutions and ISV applications on top of that. So if we talk about the Microsoft Power Platform, it's it's a lot of times really focused on, even though Power BI is part of the Power Platform, it's really focused on that everyday developer. And what we mean by that is not only just citizen developers, who we talk about as people who, just anybody within your organization who's able to build applications. We're also talking about IT being able to automate and build applications for themselves, and pro developers coming in and working on this application. Now, there's a number of things that come in Power Platform. We've got Power BI. I think as a Power BI user group, you probably extensively know this side of our Power Platform. But we've got what's called kind of Power Apps. This is where you build actually applications. And Power Apps is you can build an application for your phone, your tablet. It runs on your web browser, on your desktop, or Surface or whatever it is, PC, through a regular web browser. We've got those applications. And we got Power Automate, which is kind of what used to be called Microsoft Flow. And in Flow, you basically build automations. This is our workflow engine in the cloud. We've recently introduced Power Virtual Agents. So we introduced an easy way to build chatbots. But the way I look at all of those things is that they're really easy, quick value realization, right? You know how Power BI can be so quick and easy for your end users that are not maybe as educated or as mature in the life cycle as you are, can pick up Power BI and start building their own reports, connecting data and realizing value really quickly. We have pretty much the same vision across the Power Platform. It's for just about anybody, any skill level, to come in and start building and consuming and realizing value, right? So we got the Power Apps for building applications quickly. We got Power Automate for quickly building automations. And now we're introducing chatbots. So you don't have to have an Azure developer or go take a bunch of classes and certification to figure out how to write an Azure bot, right? We got Power Virtual Agents there that can use and consume all of these connections. Now, all of this sits on top of these kind of data connectors. So you can connect to various data sources. There's a plethora of that, obviously, as you know, in the Power BI world, where you can pull data from. But these data connectors that you're using in Power BI are actually the same data connectors we can use in the rest of the Power Platform. We've got AI Builder, something new we're introducing, which is quick value realization for people to be able to build get insights and data without really, becoming an expert in AI and machine learning or data science. And Common Data Service. So Common Data Service is the exciting and important part of this, because if you take Common Data Service in Power Apps, that's what Dynamics is. Dynamics is just a really, really complex Power App. It is a little bit of a chicken and egg, because actually what gave birth to Common Data Service and Power Apps is, in many ways, Dynamics 365, a proven platform with thousands of customers across the world are leveraging and using our online service. And our schema in the cloud in that Common Data Service database. We've taken some of the premium aspects of that and democratized that so everybody can take advantage of that. So as we talked about, this is all about quick value realization, but we don't stop at just everyday developer. We go to the pro developers as well, and you can go into the Azure perspectives and start gaining and accelerating your project as it gets more complex. So any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay, so as we talk about data, you obviously got a few things. Like you've got data. You can act on that data with Power Apps. You can automate and build workflows around that data. You can use Power BI to analyze that data, and you can use AI Builder to learn from that data and make predictions, build models, recognize objects and images, classify things, and so on, as we're going to deal with building the BI platform. Now, today you're doing all those things potentially with connectors. So in Power BI, you've got a connector to, let's say, SAP or Oracle or Salesforce, or hopefully Dynamics 365, right? You can use a connector to access that data. You can use those same connectors within Automate, Power Apps, and connect it to some of the AI Builder capabilities. We've got many of these connectors available where you can draw data from, and they're growing, every month. Of just about every major cloud service now has a Power Platform connector. That's for connecting to external data, external to the Power Platform, not so much external to your organization. While in some cases that could be true. Now, when we talk about Common Data Service, we can do all of those same things, but it's actually more of a native capability. So for us, there's really two ways we look at data. There's external, which is we use connectors to connect to an external service outside of the Power Platform, or internal. And as you guessed by the icons, these are connectors in common data service. That's really how to kind of think about those two categories. And you see here on this chart, you can build, there's two categories of Power Apps. One of them is the one that you see mostly on stage and in presentations, the one that's got all the drag and droppy stuff, and you can make it as pretty or quickly as ugly as you want, your little application. Those can use connectors and common data service. And you get the model-driven applications. And that's what Dynamics is using, and it's directly sitting on top of common data service. It's more of, think of it as forms over data. You've got Power App Portals as well. That wasn't on that chart, but it's also a new addition, and that sits on that common data service as well. And be able to quickly build a web experience to let users self-serve. So instead of hiring a developer like Nikita back in the day to build a structure in SQL and build a bunch of .NET codes, web services, and things like that, just to surface some of that data and let somebody external to your organization self-service on it, we have now capability for you to go build your data structure in common data service, build a nice little Power App model-driven application to quickly have forms over data, all without requiring a developer, then turn to portals to surface that data to your partners, customers, or external stakeholders to be able to consume and work with that data. Think smaller operational data sizes. We're not talking about BI yet. Obviously, flows can automate any one of those things. An AI builder, the data structure there is in common data service, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't use a connector and feed data into the common data service to realize its value. Now, Power BI works with both. As you know, you're using the connectors today or other ways to realize value in Power BI, but you can also use common data service within it. Now, common data service in the Power Platform, its purpose is actually to be able to easily structure a variety of business data to support interconnected business applications and processes, right? So we've taken this common data service out of Dynamics. We actually kind of just ripped out the engine of Dynamics and its inherent data structure and provided it to the customers. Now, I don't have a slide here in what's called a common data model. Common data models are schema, right? So if you're in Power BI, you probably understand a little bit about data and SQL, right? SQL is just server, the engine, and then you got the schema that you develop in it. Think of common data model as the schema, common data service as your SQL. So you got SQL Server, Azure SQL, and you got the schema inside of it. And the common data model schema was extracted from Dynamics. Why it was extracted from Dynamics was actually because, well, we got over 10 years of experience of organizations building on that schema. They've got ISV solutions. They know how to work with data. It's battlefield tested with the largest enterprises. And we actually been able to go and sell and build partnerships that say common data model is now it's open source. You can go and find it on GitHub. And it's basically Microsoft schema for common business objects like accounts, contacts, addresses, activities, and so forth. So it's people and things in a common model. The reason why it's important that common data service and Dynamics use common data model is because they're all interoperable. I can't say that word, but I think you know what I'm talking about. What that means is that if there is, data in your data warehouse in common data model format, if you got data in your Azure data lake, and you've got ISVs and add-ons that understand common data model, like our partners in Adobe and other partnerships that have been signing up at scale, are coming and talking the same schema, which is going to make your processes around connecting this data easier. So that's actually another really big, important aspect of it here. They should realize that the data in Dynamics 365 is common data model compliant, and that's really important for you as you're building solutions on it. Now, it's common data service, privately. It's fully a cloud service. You don't have to manage it. It's auto-scaling. It's secure. And it's got a bunch of great things, not only from the Power Platform perspective, then from the pro dev experience as well, where you can use that within Visual Studio. You've got Xamarin applications you can build on it. It's got inherent security. So some people say, well, why do you use common data service versus SQL, right? Or even Dynamics, right? I can go and build a list of contacts and accounts in SQL and build a custom application. Why do I need Dynamics? Well, Dynamics is going to come with security, authorization, right? It's got an auditing system built in. It's got business logic, right? You can do business rules, jobs, and things like that. Same thing in common data service. We got even coded .NET plugins you can really intuitively plug into the event pipeline of any crowd activity happening within a common data service and provide with .NET code and be able to manipulate and do data, and even a built-in workflow engine that's part of it. Then on the data side, we've got all of our kind of pre-built data models we talked about, right? You got product catalog there, you got accounts, contacts, addresses, all hooked up and ready for you. There's hundreds of fields included on the account and contact. So just about every common scenario of a business application, you pretty much start out of the box and you're ready to go. We've got a lot of customers implementing nearly pretty much out of the box configuration of Dynamics and just configure it, tune it, maybe change some labels, modify some forms, and pretty much get ready to go to production with Dynamics 365. Now on the data side, that comes with obviously needing to make sure that you've got basic reporting, right? You have basic pagination reports that are available there. And as I mentioned, that the common data model is part of it. So that data schema, at least the one that we ship out of the box, you can keep extending on top of it, is at least standards compliant. So you can buy an add-on for, SMS messaging or maybe a marketing solution add-on to our CRM platform. And that marketing solution will be able to work straight out of the box without having to do a lot of that deep integration work between the data sets. In terms of storage as well, right? Because it is a storage componentry here. There are many different internal storage types that the Common Data Service uses. It is based on Azure SQL and other Azure technologies in the most modern version of that we have today in the cloud. And we'll talk about them in the rest of this presentation. And then obviously we got some integration here for being able to export and integrate this data and plug into it. So it's Common Data Service, which is what operates Dynamics 365. Just bringing it back to the topic of that got us here. That Common Data Service is what runs Dynamics 365. All of this runs on Azure. It's transparent to you. It's not like you bring your Azure or you bring your resource group and we'll just hook up and hydrate that for you. In fact, you don't have to manage and all that. It is a true SaaS service, but we are using the latest and greatest of Azure services here to run all of our Power Platform components here that that Common Data Service runs. And actually a lot of our components like Power Automate, for example, is actually a really, really nicely dressed up version of Logic Apps that's built for businesses and citizen developers, people who quickly realize value. The licensing model might be a little more attractive in some ways than the others. And you don't need developers to start building it, but you can combine the two, right? AI Builder, doesn't mean that you can't go to Azure and start building all your AI and ML models in Azure. It's just the fact that AI Builder makes it easier for more people to do that in some of these scenarios. And all of that can be hooked up to Power BI.
I have a question. What if you were to create one of these solutions using Power Automate? What's the difference between doing it on Power Automate and versus doing it on Logic App?
So Power Automate will just have just a little nicer guardrails probably for you. You don't need to have access to an Azure portal. You don't need to provision and understand what resource groups are and understand how binding that is, right? A lot of Power Automate has seeded licensing. So let's say you're a Dynamics 365 admin, you got a bunch of Dynamics 365 users. They can build automations in Power Automate on top of Dynamics data, and it's included in their licensing. Okay?
Gotcha.
If you're an Office user, you can go and automate your Office products with Power Automate because you got that seeded license to maybe take a file out of SharePoint, read a SharePoint list, go send an email through Office Connection, and use that. And basically your non-IT pro, non-dev people that, you're not going to give us Azure portal access to your, middle level manager somewhere in the field. Right. Where Power Automate, in fact, it's on by default. There's actually a default environment in all of your organizations. If you go to makethatpowerapps.com today on your work computer, in your domain, right, logged into your account, you'll see that there's actually, when you go to environments on top right, you'll have a default environment. That's a free playground for everybody. I don't say free, but free isn't, it's not unlimited. It's ungoverned playground. There we go. Better word. It's, it's not exactly free. It's ungoverned playground where everybody can go create flows, can go with Power Automate, can go create Power Apps, can share, can use connectors and connect to data. and share. People can go create their own environments and things like that within it, but it allows everybody in your organization to have access to it. Most people have some type of an Azure Office subscription, so they'll be able to immediately realize value of Power Apps and Power Automate immediately without doing anything, right? Without having to contact IT and get access to Azure, get a resource group, and understand what that is.
Gotcha. So, but if I'm an IT pro and I'm using Power Apps along with the Power Platform, I can just go ahead and use Logic App just for if I want to, right?
Yeah, we're not limiting that you have to, like, say you're a Dynamics customer, you don't have to use these components, right? Say you're a Dynamics customer, you want a rich, robust mobile application for your end users. You're going to go take Xamarin, you're going to build a bespoke application, connect to our nice OData API. We're going to build a middleware service, right? To go and just get the data from Common Data Service here, and then go produce a Xamarin application. If you needed to build some pretty aggressive integration automation, or some other complex process automation, for example, out of Dynamics, right? Executing a sales order or something really complex in a third-party system, or maybe dealing with payments, or something very specific to your business, there's no reason why you couldn't use Logic Apps and then have a Logic App be triggered out of Common Data Service or Dynamics. And at that point, you can use the Logic Apps because it's got componentry and Visual Designer as well, but also can come in and start building your .NET code and connect Azure Functions and all these other goodies.
Gotcha. Thank you.
In fact, there's also an Azure Service Bus native integration from Common Data Service as well. So if you need more like event pipeline out of Dynamics, you can basically opt in to say, okay, accounts or contacts, as those are getting changes, Azure Service Bus is going to go and pick up those changes that you basically directed to an Azure Service Bus. And then you can have Logic Apps reading off of it, or Azure Functions reading off of it, and kind of sending eventing data from it.
So, thank you.
And that's where Extend with Azure comes in, right? So you can use Azure Functions, Event Hubs, Azure Service Bus, and build things that are just kind of comparative to it. Now, those things on the right are not going to go and touch directly our SQL Elastic pools or anything like that. They're going to come into us through the API, our OData API front end, or use one of our pre-built connectors. And the reason for that is because of all the goodies we talked about earlier here, right? If you come in from the API front end, we're going to make sure that the security and authorization is there. If you build business logic, it's there. If there's automation and workflows, when you create a lead, that those process. If you just touch directly SQL, okay, right? We might not notice it. So that's why we can obscure that for Dynamics and Common Data Service. There isn't a way for you to go and connect into the backend and go touch the actual data from it. But we're building, and this is what this presentation is about, a bunch of different ways for you to go and extract that out of Common Data Service and land that into other places. So let's talk, really quickly, in Common Data Service, entities are tables, fields are columns, and relationships are relationships. So you can basically build, for me, it was such a natural transition for me, a .NET developer with Microsoft SQL background, to come into the Dynamics world and be able to immediately be at home, because there were tables, columns, and relationships. And there was pretty much not a limit to what I can do. Now we don't have like coded column data types or anything super fancy like that. There's other ways to do things. But it is pretty much for anything I need for line of business application, which is what Common Data Service or Dynamics is built for. We've got everything we need. And there's very few customers that really tap out of those scenarios. Usually they're like really, really bespoke ISVs. They're building something really extensive. But in 99% of our customers, there's never a problem with limitations of actual data platform that Common Data Service can bring, because we are actually running on Azure SQL. We're actually one of the biggest consumers of Azure SQL. Data types from our end here, we do have some very interesting data types. That's probably one of the first things you'll notice when you're working with Dynamics 365 and Common Data Service, is that we do have some interesting data types. For example, we have an option set where you're going to get an integer value. So an option set could be, for example, type of an account. So when you have an account, name of the account, address, whatever, those will be all single text. Maybe a description will be multi-text, but you'll start noticing things when you get and start touching data from Dynamics, is that you'll see option sets like, is active account or not, and you'll see a bit, right? You'll see status codes and other option sets where you're actually going to get an integer, and you're going to have like, 10,001, 10,002. And you say, I don't know what that means. And there's going to be, account type. There will be a table somewhere else that translate that to standard account, premium account, VIP account, for example. And you wouldn't have that labels directly here in your table here. Now, lookups for us, how we're handling lookups, this is how we build relationships as well. So if you needed, on an account to have a primary contact, you can have a primary contact, and everything is global unique identifier based, or GUID, or whichever way you want to pronounce that. So you got GUID or GUID, whatever camp you're in. That's how our primary keys are in all of Common Data Service and Dynamics. So when you have a lookup to another row, let's say an account will have a lookup into a contact for a primary contact, you'll have that. When you have a relationship from contacts to accounts, you'll drop a field in an account for a parent account, for example, right? And on the contact, then you'll have the account ID, which is going to be the global unique identifier of that contact. So it's pretty simple. We used our global unique identifiers. We generate them ourselves in our system for various reasons of optimization and true uniqueness. Now, there's a ton to learn about this, so I'm going to just kind of pause this topic and just say there's a learning resource to learn more about Common Data Service. I probably should have pulled in a slide here on Common Data Model. Hopefully, I explained a little bit about what the Common Data Model is and the relevance of that. Microsoft back schema that the wider industry, our partners like Adobe, I think Oracle is on board with us. Salesforce just hates us no matter what, so I don't think they're on board, but other partners are. Any questions before we get to kind of now the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about here for this session? So I think somebody went off mute.
I have a question. So you mentioned that the entities are columns and fields are records, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, everything is a row, right? So you got entities are tables. They have rows, which are called records, and then fields are their columns, and then they might have relationships.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And in fact, since we are kind of in a loose format here, I'll go to make that Power Apps. I wasn't planning on demos because of the length of that, the time slot we have. But if you go to make that Power Apps, let's say you have an environment that has Common Data Service or one of your Dynamics environments, and there's a reason why I want to pick make that Power Apps. Now, there's an older place for Dynamics customers, and that's fine. They're still there. If there's a new fancier home for them here and make that Power Apps, they can go to Data, and they have entities. And entities are the tables. And you'll see that I have a bunch of tables here, like account, right? And I can go to that table, and I can see that I've got a bunch of fields here. I've got relationships, business rules. I got views and forms. This is where my forms over data, the model-driven part that Dynamics uses here to quickly show things. Here, right? So I got my unique identifier here, which is the primary key here of the account. I got my primary field. So everywhere in Dynamics, when you're navigating, for example, so let me actually switch this to modern UI. When you're navigating, you're never going to see the key in the UI here in Dynamics. Let me go to Accounts. Right, what you're going to see is this data. You can see the primary key name, and that name is pretty important because that's where you're going to see in all the lookups. So if I go to a datum, I'm going to have a primary contact. So if we go and look for, and I'm pausing on this because this is going to be important for you when you're building data to understand a little bit about the data model behind it. So I have primary contact, which is a lookup. Let's take a look at this. It's a lookup to the contact entity. It's got a schema name, so you'll see primary contact ID on when you're in Power BI. You'll see the friendly label. You can rename it to. And what happens here is that on my account, you have the primary name, which is the account name, which is always what shows in our lists of data, right? And then it's got a primary contact. It should be here somewhere on the right? Primary contact. And then I'm referencing here a contact record. When I go to that contact record, but not required, it's a whole different relationship, is that they've got a company name. If I go to that company, they got multiple contacts that are related to that company, like Susan, who's not a primary contact, but still has the company name on it. To you on the data end, what you'll see is that you'll see it primary contact. Go back to entities, go find contact. You're going to find a field here for company, and it is, a lookup. This one's a special one. So there's a few places where you'll actually find polymorphic types, like this customer ID. But in most places, for a business application, as your customers will customize it, it's pretty straightforward. You'll be able to see this schema. Now, when you use Power BI on desktop or in the service, we'll talk about the different ways to pull it in. When you're going to pull that in, it's very modern connector. You'll see all the relationships in the data. You'll see all the schema. Unless you do actually field trimming, you're actually going to get. So actually, the plus and minus of our common data model that we have here is that you see account. I've got probably 200 columns here on the contact ready to go out of the box. So you probably even want to just trim that data as you're bringing it into Dynamics to just the relevant fields that your business is asking you to build a report on. And then obviously it may preview some of the data here, but hopefully that helps, right? And then we got the option set here. And the option set, if I go to edit the address code, I can see that I got built to, ship to, primary, and other types of address that's available for me to use within the system. So you'll just notice some of those interesting data types as you're navigating the system when you get the data on the into the Power BI side. So actually, it's a good point that I did actually bring it up. So now let's talk about reporting, analytics, and BI in Dynamics, Common Data Service, right? So you got operational reporting. What we mean by operational reporting is these are smaller data sets. This is me going into Dynamics and saying, hey, I'd like a dashboard of my sales activity, right? This is not Power BI. This is Dynamics, just drawing some dashboards. I can go start drilling into things like that. I can go to accounts and I have different views like my accounts, accounts I follow, all accounts. I can go see some basic charting. That's operational stuff, right? I see small data set of data. I want to see some charting capability, things like that. If I want to run my, account distribution report, what you're actually going to see here is I'm going to run an SSRS report. So we got views, charts. We can combine views and charts into dashboards. We've got some old school SSRS reports running here. Some of you might be just shocked that still exists. We're still a couple of versions back here a little bit on our SSRS capability, but this is what our inbox free paginated report platform is. Pick something and even have that. But yeah, let's just basically imagine you've got that SSRS report drawn here, and you do that in a traditional sense, right? I don't think I have my demo set. There's a good reason why I also have a lot of demo planned here. So you've got operational things. Now, one of the things you can do in an operational side is I can go and have one of my dashboards be a Power BI dashboard. So you can take a Power BI dashboard and embed it into Dynamics. Now, one of the things here, now I picked a dashboard and this one hasn't been refreshed in a really long time. This is Power BI, right? I can go and drill into things. I can open this report straight into Power BI. And navigate this experience in Power BI. But all this capability truly actually is it's not something magical that's taking a Power BI report and actually binding it with Common Data Service data. It's actually an easy capability for you to bring in any Power BI report and actually just create it. and just put it into Dynamics. So it's almost like a shortcut capability. But it's going to go and reach out to my workspaces that are available for me, and I can go see the dashboards of the reports that are available for me and just bring them into Dynamics. And literally all it's done, it's not doing anything with authentication because Power BI service is still doing it. It's not doing anything in terms of feeding it data. It has no idea where it's at. Power BI has no idea where it's at. Basically, all we're doing is a very fancy iframe to your report. You're just bringing it in so you can have an easier way. You're not jumping out to the Power BI service to try to locate that report. So that's one option. Now, a new option that we're actually introducing, and this is still kind of a thing just about out of preview, is if you're familiar with direct query connections. So I'll have a breakdown of that. But what's exciting about that one is that traditionally, if our customers had to build a Power BI report, their expectations were that you bring the Power BI report, you design it, then you slap it into Dynamics, and then magic happens, and then Dynamics data perspective to me, let's say I'm logged in as Nikita and I'm a salesperson in the field, I see just my data. That's actually not the case. You're going to see exactly the report that was generated, that was shared with you, or that you've built. And if you share that report in Power BI, and then you go here and share this dashboard with another user in Dynamics, well, that's not going to mean that all of a sudden that data is going to magically transform. So it's very important to understand that, just because we have Power BI integration here, it's not really integration. It's actually just embedding of just about any Power BI report. We'll chat about that. What the game changer of bringing direct query to Common Data Service is, you could build a Power BI report using direct query, and at the runtime of that report, it's going to go and actually call CDS service that's running this Dynamics instance and say, Nikita is opening this report, give Nikita's accounts and contacts. Right? And then the service is going to go processing all the permissions and hierarchy and everything I've built up to make sure that I see, now I'm an administrator, so I see everything, but I see just my accounts, right? And because I see just my accounts, then I can see the right set of data on the report, and now I can actually have more of an operational report, because a lot of our customers are saying, well, this is interesting, or maybe this met the needs of us earlier on. I've been playing with Power BI, and you know what? I love the user experience on that. What happens with them is that they go out and build a Power BI report, and then they're kind of saying, hey, I embedded the Power BI report. Why is it not respecting the security and the hierarchy of data for my users, right? There's a couple of things to consider, right? First of all, you need to make sure your Power BI users are licensed for Power BI. Dynamics doesn't have a seeded license, and this embedding capability doesn't do some magical Power BI embedded. Right? It's just taking Power BI and embedding it through kind of a fancy iframe for you into Dynamics. So what companies have to do is, when they build a report in Power BI or a dashboard, they have to go build role-level security. And when they start building that, the Dynamics user, usually that's maybe not as educated in Power BI, is like, oh, that's tough. Right? Then comes you, right? You know role-level security, and you say, well, describe your security model. And then 17 hours later, everybody wants to kill themselves because you're rebuilding the security model of Dynamics, security model that might be overcomplicated for years and years and years, and people are not happy. So there's still place for that. We'll talk about that in just a second. But with introduction of direct query, you build a report, you use the Common Data Service direct query connection, and then you're able to actually get the data at the driver level via the powers of direct query to go and get that. The reason why it's in the category of operational reporting is that because it's a direct query, you're not going to have that refresh into Power BI service. You're not going to have a data warehouse behind the scenes refreshing in real time. You're going to see the report. It's going to go to Dynamics Power BI. It's going to start rendering the report. It says, oh, I got a data direct query connection here. Let me go and execute that connection. It goes to our API. Executes the API on behalf of the user, drawing the data set on behalf of that user with their real data. All that takes time, and there's a lot of pressure going on when that happens. So you don't want to build a report for a director or a CEO using direct query and go crash, Power BI service sitting there waiting, and then the Dynamics service through the Common Data Service API that's going to be overtaxed here, sitting and pulling hundreds of thousands of records, doing all those things. So you want to limit it to sales and sales manager using that Power BI direct query. Now this is newer one. If you're a Dynamics person in the audience, you're like, what? When did this happen? It's about to happen. We've announced it at Ignite, but it is coming. I think it's just about a preview, so I don't have the exact dates. But that's probably the most exciting development here, because what it's going to allow us to do is be able to take all of these reports that they had in Dynamics, and when we just wanted more, we wanted a time chart, we wanted a nice gauge, we wanted some of the niceties, we wanted all the nice filters you guys have in Power BI, and be able to bring that to our Dynamics users for their day-to-day dashboards. Now with the direct query, the organizations can build that as long as the users are licensed in Power BI service. Because to share a report, you still need to share the report in the Power BI service, and then you can go bring it in Dynamics and then share it with the rest of the users. Just sharing it in Dynamics doesn't share it somehow magically in the Power BI service. Right? So that's the operational reporting side. So any questions on this before we kind of move on to the self-service or enterprise BI?
So for each user that has access to view this dashboard, they would definitely need the Power BI Pro license, right? The free one will not work. That comes with Office. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I have this. We have from FastTrack. We have a partner training that we do, and there's a slide there that says we have not and are not today offering Power BI licensing as part of Dynamics or Power Platform licensing. Right, and there's it's pro and con to that. Con is, some people just didn't understand that was the case. Con, and then the pro is many organizations already licensed that. So it doesn't need to be pro; it could be Power BI Premium. The specific capability that's requiring you to be licensed is that what Dynamics provide is self-service BI, and I'll show that on the next slide really quick. Right, so self-service BI, right? We've got a way to export data to Excel, and then this is, as you're probably not surprised, it's how most people do BI, right? And look at data. You can go Power BI Desktop, download the app, and then go use the Common Data Service connector, and then go pull the data. By the way, if you see the Dynamics connector, don't use that anymore. That's the old legacy one. Use the Common Data Service connector, put in the URL to your Dynamics instance in the cloud, and then you'll be able to get the data. So that's going to go take the data straight from our OData API and then bring it into our BI service. So that user self-service BI is me building my own reports, me discovering data. So what Dynamics has for free is, which is what's free in Power BI, is I can go and build my own report, consume it. I can even go take that report and then bring it into Dynamics as my own dashboard like I have today. I can try to share this report, this dashboard in Dynamics, which is basically has a very fancy iframe. And when, let's say I should share it with Alan or Amy, when they both log in, Power BI service is going to load up and it's going to say, you don't have access to this report. Then they're going to ask Nikita to go share that report. When Nikita tries to share that report, what happens in Power BI? It says, well, that's your personal workspace. Do you have Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium? Please upgrade your workspace to one of those. Oh, that's the actual capability that's requiring you, because the use case is you're going to want to build a report for the enterprise. So self-service BI is knock yourself out, build your own reports. You can build your own reports using direct query. I think this is going to be really exciting stuff here. But the moment you want to share a report, you kind of get into this enterprise BI. There's a little bit more to it here, but you can take, some of the classic ways, we introduced Power BI integration 3-5 years ago. Just addresses our OData endpoint and brings data into Power BI service. Now you can still take that report, put it on Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium capacity workspace, share it with those users, which requires a license for those users, obviously. And then you can, go bring that into a dashboard, bring that into a form in Dynamics, and then you can have more users consume it. But Dynamics doesn't, like if you got 3 users, Nikita, Alan, and Amy, you need to make sure that Nikita, Alan, and Amy are licensed in Power BI because of the fact that they're using a shared report. Hopefully that answers the question. Let me know if it doesn't.
Yes, it does indeed. Thank you very much.
Yeah. it's a, to me, it's a like all my new customers will start. It was like, hey, what's your Power BI requirements? Are you licensed for Power BI? And then we're just all just waiting to hear. And many times they are, because usually sellers are consuming other reports. Somebody in customer services is consuming some like product service reports, and many organizations are already on Power BI premium capacity there that covers most of the organization anyways.
Gotcha.
Now, when we talk about enterprise BI, and this is where we have reports that are shared, reports that are built on large quantities of data, reports that are shared with people that have access and vision into large sets of data, like your directors, your enterprise, SLT, and CIO, C-suite, and all those, right? They're going to look at either large sets of data or have a report built for them that they're just consuming, right? Even in Dynamics or maybe outside of Dynamics. For them, there's a number of options for Dynamics to send that data. And we have the Common Data Export Service that sends the data out of Common Data Service into an Azure SQL database. We do have that same web API. You can use the thing above it right here to do the same thing for Enterprise BI. You just share the report, or use our web APIs and have your ETL, reach in and grab what it needs, and whatever you do after that is yours. Or we have a brand new capability for Common Data Service to Azure Data Lake, and then you put Power BI on top of it. And we'll talk about that in detail here.
Can this connect to an on-premise SQL database?
I think Common Data Service can sync to an Azure SQL, and Azure SQL can sync down to your on-premise SQL database. The version, the schema here for Azure SQL is going to be almost Common Data Service model. It's actually closer to what's behind the scenes in Dynamics than it is true Common Data Schema, but it's darn close enough anyways. It's not like you're going to see different data types. It's just some of the things, how it does it, it'll be different. When you have Data Lake, you're going to see true Common Data Model folder structure in Common Data in Azure Data Lake. But yeah, that's one of the scenarios. Now, there's also ISV solutions. There's a bunch of them, like Scribe, Kingsway Soft, Cozy Rock. I keep running out of names. There's a bunch of SSIS, data integration solutions that run both on-prem, in a VM, in a true cloud capacity, where you can go and connect to Dynamics 365 data, take that data, automate it, transform it, load it into other systems, and bringing it from other systems back into Dynamics. So there's a lot of integration capabilities in the ISV channel as well. There isn't a native data integration platform in Dynamics, though, right? We got Azure Service Bus. We got this data export service to feed the data out. We got Azure CDS to ADLS. There really isn't one that's inbox that says, hey, let's take a connector and send data to Dynamics. Now, we were starting to get there with connectors in Common Data Service, because when we're here in the Maker portal, you see gateways to bring data up from your on-premises systems, connectors, and then I'm not the best expert on it. There's data flows. But you can also have those things kind of going in. But natively, there isn't an ingest into Dynamics data. We'll chat that. There is a slide.
Gotcha. So typically, when you have a different professionals working on one of these apps using Power BI and Power Automate and Power Apps, do you have specific people that tackle the Power App side, and then specific people that tackle the Power Automate side, and so on? Or does the one person deal with every single one of those platforms and works with it in their app?
It depends on what operating stage you're in, right? If you're in a net new project build, you got an implementation partner, they're building your Dynamics system. At this point, they're using Power Automate for all their workflow needs. They're using Power Apps if they needed to build a bespoke mobile app for your employees. If they need to do reporting, I mean, there's no better choice at the industry than Power BI. So, but they're different usually people within that project team that do it. And then it all lands into an operate stage where usually the customer, who didn't buy maybe a maintenance program from their partner, kind of just gets to inherit that. You can buy Premier services, and you basically get a cloud ops person from our side that can help you make sure your logs are nice, teach you how to administer the platform, but you don't get a hands-on operate person. So usually in most projects after go live at a customer side, you have somebody that's called a CRM administrator. and their job is everything. Many times, they're going to be there maintaining workflows, maintaining forms, continuously building, assigning users roles and things like that. And a lot of this report tuning comes to them. Usually, it's a pretty tall order. A person that skilled is very sought after in our partner community. So it's a little bit of like pretty competitive landscape in our talent situation right now. Is that anybody that knows anything really quickly moves up in the career path here in the common data service dynamics world, just due to the demand. Demand is outpacing the supply of skilled professionals. So usually actually have somebody that starts as an administrator, becomes a functional consultant at a partner, becomes a business analyst at a partner. If they're a project manager doing a CRM project and really love that world, and they're off, and it's kind of like new cream crop. But the Power Platform is creating people that are creating careers, right? They're automating themselves out of their day jobs that are boring to take and transform data, using Power Automate to transform data, using Power BI to report on it well. And then if they're clever, crafty, and quick, they can basically say, hey, I'm going to be the apps person or digital transformation guru. And where I'm going to go is go through departments and find all these archaic, things where it's Excel running my department, and then go build a Power App that does the same thing and tune that up. And that's going to be awesome. And that's pretty much all I do. And we have like flagship stories from Virgil Atlantic to others of people doing that. I wouldn't say killing jobs, but making their jobs awesome. And letting people do more meaningful things than move data from nightly. There's a file drop here, and I'm going to take that and adjust it somewhere else, and I'm going to retype that or copy and paste things into Excel, and have Excel functions run my business.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that side. I don't know if I really answered your question, but it's
no, you didn't.
There's a lot of skill sets here. That kind of go super pro. Like I talked about, the common expectation for Power BI and Dynamics is that you just have Power BI, you just build a report and magic happens. Whereas really much not the case. Like before direct query for small and operational size report, you had to really quickly be like, hopefully you didn't overcomplicate the security model, because now you have to repeat it in role level security model in Power BI. Whoops. That could take some time, and definitely going to need an expert. I'm definitely not your run-of-the-mill Dynamics person who can quickly do that. They can explain what the security model should be, but they're probably not gonna. They're gonna need some training to do role-level security well, right? Right. Let's dive into a few of these other things, right? So how is this Power BI integration done? I don't like this diagram because it assumes that self-service and UI integration are the same, but let's just look at this, right? So you can embed reports, dashboards, tile visualization, and the drill through works. It works on mobile. It's a shocking feature. You have Dynamics 365 for mobile application. You put a dashboard and Power BI on it. It just works on mobile. Like, almost like they're too good to be true. Like, really? Wow, make sure your report looks good when it reflows to mobile, but it works and it's fantastic. The model integration, you've got the Power Query over our data feeds. You got obviously we talked about our entity model. You can go and basically dress it up. I'm not as Power BI data and analytics really aren't my first skill sets. So I'm going to butcher this, right? In terms of loading, transforming, and obviously instilling measures of presenting that data into a visual, all those things are frankly data at that point in Power BI service, and obviously we're compliant with that. We're not some weird data file type that you can't read, or some object shape that's it's all tables, columns, rows of data, relationships, right? It's pretty standard stuff. Okay. In terms of data integration, we'll talk about that in the breakout slides, right? So it's basically the same info flipped around. The only other thing to kind of mention is that not only can you take Dynamics here and have it here, don't have it down here, but let's say you had an account, and the common need, right, is, hey, I have a CRM system, I have an ERP system, or maybe an IoT system or something else. I need to show data from this other system. So what I can have here is I can have a Power BI report embedded into my model-driven application, and then pass it a filter of the account I'm on. Now I can see my past orders or my IoT measurements or whatever else I need, without having to do something crazy like driving that massive data stream into common data service. which is an operational data model never designed for transactional or high-flow IoT data, right? But you can build a Power BI report and show that. Now, we do have capability to show, like, you can embed the Canvas apps. This is forms over data. You have the little, fancier looking apps that are more kind of free-form looking. Those applications, you can go and actually embed both. And in fact, we're on the journey that we're publicly disclosed that we're going to take this forms over data and let you combine your experience of bringing in your model-driven experiences into with the Canvas experiences and Power BI. So in fact, you can have a little bit of like, I don't want to say it. It's basically, you can have Power BI within the embedded Canvas app embedded into Dynamics. In Dynamics, you have your account. You can have a Power BI report on your account, on your orders. But if you want an action on that order, you don't want to go into your ERP system. You can embed a Canvas application into your Power BI report and then have the Canvas application go and talk to the ERP data and go update that data. So a lot of tremendous UI capability here coming, and a lot of that is going to be coming to our Dynamics users, like, so they don't feel like, hey, I've had this forms over data stuff. I really wish I had access to my Canvas application that everybody's showing on keynotes and stages. But we have that. So for example, here, if this loads, it's like a risk of doing last minute demos. I have a little Canvas app experience. Should prep the demo here with, you can build a tab or bring in the Power BI report and passive filters. Anyways, let's move on. You already know the Power BI features themselves. So let's talk about some of those integrations again. The basic connector, this is what most people end up using when they go in. They probably use the Dynamics connector when they went to Power BI service. It's going to go and pull data. You've got that scheduled refresh. It is user specific. So when Nikita goes and builds his report, I built a report for Nikita. Unless I've added role level security on the Power BI side, it is not going to transform magically based on the user. Now, you've got scheduled refresh, as you probably know, but not as obvious for people coming from Dynamics, right? Dynamics people expect, it's like, why is that? I just changed my sales data because I got a meeting with my manager. Why is my Power BI report not reflect that? Well, it hasn't refreshed yet. Well, refresh it, right? And there's a limited number of refreshes, so you got that. Direct query, that kind of gets rid of that, right? So if I'm updating some data in Dynamics and immediately I want to see that on my operational report, right, without pulling tens of thousands of records, I go show my manager during my sales meeting, says, okay, here's my quotas, right? Here's how I'm achieving my goals, or here's my customer service dashboard in real time. Now that data is pulling user-specific data set in real time. Enterprise side of things is a little different, right? So when people want to get a warm copy of Dynamics data, today and for the last few years, they've been using data export service. Data export services are cloud services included in Dynamics. What it does, it drops, you go and specify a profile. Let's say, okay, I want account data, I want contact data, and I want to send that to my Azure SQL database, right? And you basically specify the profile of the schema that you want, and then you basically drop it in Azure SQL. And it basically creates a warm data. It's about a 15-minute SLA on this. Most customers get their data within 5 minutes. Most demos look almost real time. But that's using our kind of free service. There's no pools, so there's no impact to performance in Dynamics. It happens all virtually behind the scenes through all of our automagic, right, behind the scenes. And then you can take that from Azure SQL and take that to your data warehouses and other places, right? And then you consume it within either self-service or enterprise BI. Right? Take it to your mass scale Excel or whatever you need to do, right? So this data expert service, right? You bring your own Azure subscription that you own as a customer. You integrate that and would basically stream that data. Now you can do SQL Server and Azure VM. The reason why we say SQL Server and Azure VM is that if you do this straight to on-premise, it's going to be slow and painful. you can go and sync that version here, sitting in a cloud, down to on-premise if you need to. It's basically going to replicate the metadata and the replication. Most issues people have with Common Data Service is that no CRM project is ever complete, so people are always messing with the schema, and the schema changes is what usually kind of overloads the Azure service a little bit sometimes. So people throw the cheapest Azure box at it, of course, and there's sometimes some syncing problems. But it is pretty easy to configure. Once IT gives you the actual SQL Azure thing, just give you the keys, you hook it up, and then Dynamics just starts giving you a warm copy of data. It is enterprise scalable to the terms that you can basically take a really large data set right out of Common Data Service, because if you try to reach out and do a query, like give me all accounts, in most enterprise, mid-sized and enterprise organizations, you have a lot of rows. You have a lot of rows here, and that's going to start timing out and start batching out your service, and that's not really going to be good, right? You don't want your report delayed, or you're actually impacting the performance of Dynamics. You want something that's gently pushing the data out of Dynamics, and then you're going to go build large data set reports on it instead of attacking the actual system of operational system of Dynamics. It's basic. I think there's like 3 diagrams showing exactly the same thing. The benefits of that is, bring your own object data store, data warehouse, data models here, and you take data out of Dynamics. You want to have your own dedupe store. Well, don't go attacking Dynamics. Go take the warm copy of that as you're importing new leads, and then run deduping on that. If you're doing Power BI, take the Azure SQL that's resultant of that. I'll probably say transform it one more time into another storage device, and then report from that. But it's pretty much kind of been our de facto enterprise solution until at Ignite we announced that Common Data Service, the Azure Data Lake service, is coming. Everybody's being excited about Azure Data Lake service. Same thing, truly seamless. You don't have the pool scenario impacting performance of your Dynamics system. It is continuously sending a pipeline of data to Azure Data Lake. It's doing that in a slightly different way because Azure Data Lake is more folder data store. About as much you're going to get out of me, but it's a little different than Azure SQL, but it can scale, right? And it can go and be consumed by many other things, obviously including Power BI. So for scenarios of, all of these insights, analytics, and other scenarios, you can do that. We're actually a first-party customer of this. We actually built this for ourselves first. And we said, hey, let's make sure our customers can benefit from it, because we have our own managed service that we've used. So when you're using our Sales Insight, Customer Care, Customer Insights, or any of our other capabilities, you're consuming it through our hidden Azure Data Lake. Because we need to do analytics and reporting of large data sets to do so. The scenario here that's introduced with Common Data Service to Azure Data Lake is being able to take that and feed it to your own owned customers' Azure Data Lake and drop it in Common Data Service. Common Data Model folders. You could do this today. If you got developers and you already got Common Data Lake and you're pulling data from Dynamics somehow today already, it's not some extraordinary thing you couldn't accomplish. What's magical in this use case, they had it in the slides. Give me just a second. So requirements, obviously you need Common Data Service. You need enough permissions to do it. Your entities need to be opted in to change tracking. So our seamless system does it behind the scenes and sends the changes through. And there's some specific requirements on the ADLS side. Here's some of the features. I'm not going to read them off, but one of the coolest things that it does, I should say here somewhere, is that it does pretty small size chunks. So let's say if I update just my sales data, it doesn't have to rebuild the whole snapshot. It goes and actually does partial snapshot updates, I think is what it's called. So the cool news is that you don't have to wait forever. So if your salespeople are actually using the report, there's still going to be data latency in this report, but it being able to hydrate and update data into the data lake at row level into a specific entity folder is pretty ingenious. So in wrapping up, there is data flows. You can use Power BI data flows to go and extract data out of Dynamics using our regular kind of OData connector. I don't think Direct query connector is a good fit here. Because it's per user, and data flows don't really have a user, right? So data flows here would introduce something where you go use a regular CDS connector, pull it out and use more of the data flow path. Any questions? And I'll go through just a quick anti-pattern use case. We're coming up on time. So for the anti-patterns, this is what most customers many times try to do. Because the number one thing that many people want with a CRM system is, I want customer 360. I think that was a bold term for a few years, right? I want to be able to have a seller or a customer service, and when they're in my new Dynamics fresh out of the box system, I want them to see all of their orders, all of their tickets, all their IoT messages. And we've had people shove IoT data in Dynamics. We had people shove ERP data into Dynamics. To a degree, the ERP data is fine. With some limitations, IoT data doesn't belong in Dynamics, right? The exceptions to IoT data that should trigger case creation should be, but you shouldn't have to try to grab massive data stores or other systems and actually put them into the common data service. One, because if you got them locally, that's going to take you some time and transaction. Even if you had them in the cloud, with the advancements and capabilities of being able to do an embedded Canvas app to go and actually do a Power Platform connection to your Salesforce or Oracle. If you got customer service and your sales data is in Salesforce, your customer service UI can have a Canvas app using the Salesforce connector showing you leads and opportunities. So as you're talking to a customer who's upset and you're seeing that they're trying to get sold something, you can make it a little sweeter experience for them, right? Or whatever it is. If you're on the reverse scenario and you've got like ServiceNow or something, right, and you're in the sales in Dynamics scenario and you have a Canvas app that wants to go and look at what's going on in ServiceNow, they can do that through the Canvas app. Or even better, obviously, the use case here is maybe a Power BI dashboard. The Power BI dashboard, you just embed it on the form, and then it can go and connect to other data systems, right? So obviously, the pros of that is it feels like it's an easy thing, but unfortunately, you got a ton of ingest, network cost, the data latency in those other systems, and also the overhead of the performance that throttles system, and everything else. So basically, with the ability to embed Power BI and ability to embed Canvas applications that use connectors, there's no need to bring in, as much data as maybe organizations originally thought they would have to, just to be able to get a customer 360 view. In fact, we have a specific product called Dynamics 365 Customer Insight that is actually built outside of Dynamics, and Dynamics is one of the sources of data where it's actually built for that customer 360, and it's got I forgot the acronym, but it's got like kind of basically load, match, and then kind of infer models in there that it's built for you to be able to do that. So as we talked about, some of the options are instead of bringing all the data into Dynamics, is to use embedded Canvas app and use Power BI. If you need to get data out of Dynamics, you've got webhooks, Azure Service Bus, all of our API capabilities. You can introduce, obviously, Power BI experiences into that. Or use our SSIS connector. And the SSIS connector uses our regular CDS connector behind the scenes. Now, this is just a few of the sessions at Ignite that have to do with Dynamics, Common Data Service, and Power BI. I'll call your attention to the first one. That's the session code. So definitely go to that website or just Bing or Google, whatever is your flavor, to Ignite sessions on demand. When you go there, you can look for CDS, Azure Data Lake, or use that session code. You'll have a full detailed session on CDS to Azure Data Lake. You've got a full session on data flows, and you've got more sessions on kind of common data service and things like that. There's even more sessions than this. There's some public kind of roadmap information of kind of where we're heading with this. Nothing kind of dramatic in different kind of what I presented at this stage. In fact, this presentation gave me a chance to go and update some of the things on this presentation to the most modern versions. So we'll take questions. I know this was a gallop through everything.